So the next part of the conceptual framework talks about what makes good information. And it talks about that because that's all accounts do, isn't it? They just give out information. So we say, well, what are the principles? How do you give out good information? And what it says is, well, good information is split up into two things. Fundamental characteristics. Fundamental characteristics mean that information would be useless without these fundamental characteristics. And one of those fundamental characteristics is faithful representation. So it needs to faithfully represent the economic phenomena. Okay, and that sounds quite difficult. What do you mean? So here's an example. If you sell something for 6 and you agree to buy it back at the same time for 8 a year later, have you actually sold it? Well, the true economic phenomena says no, you haven't, because you're going to buy it back later. So what is this? What is the true economic phenomena? This is not a sale, this is a loan. And what about the extra 2 between the 6 and the 8? Well, you show that as interest. So interest of 2 and a loan of 6. So always faithfully represent what's going on, otherwise it's useless. That wasn't a sale, it should be shown as a loan. Okay. Another example of that would be you always use substance over form, don't we? So we always say that you control an asset is enough. You don't have to own it, because if you control it for all its life, then it's your asset, isn't it? You don't have to own it. It's substance over form. So that's faithful representation, the first one of the fundamental characteristics of good information. There is another one, which is relevance. Now, for something to be relevant, it needs to be relevant to the user. How is it relevant to the user? And remember, it's useless if it's not relevant to the user. Well, it either has to confirm or it needs to predict what's going to happen. Okay, so if I was to give you an example of a discontinued column. So in a discontinued column, you put all the things that you aren't going to sell anymore. So it might be, let's say Apple decided to not sell iPads anymore. You would see how many iPads they'd sold this year in the discontinued column in the income statement. And you'd think to yourself, that tells me they won't be selling them next year. So it's helping me predict what's going to happen. So that is relevant information. So that's basically it. You have faithful representation, which is and relevance, which are fundamental characteristics, which means it's useless without them. And then in the next video, we're going to see enhancing characteristics. And enhancing characteristics don't mean that it's useless without it, but without it, it is less useful without these characteristics. And we'll look at that in the next video.